Yes, yes. What's up, everybody? Coffee Conversations with Greg J is on. Yeah. We're out here. Culturally relevant conversations from a global perspective. Casual, because we're just sitting here having coffee with folks from all over the globe, kicking it, chopping it up, but finding solutions, getting us to thinking, contemplations from our perspective. Yeah. Well, by now, I think you've cast your vote. I hope you went to the polls. I know I did, out here in California, as we ask ourselves, what's in it for us? What's out here that we need to contemplate and consider for Black folks? I think reparations should be at the top of the list out there. California was one of the first states to do an intensive study on the aspects of reparations. What would it look like? Is California complicit in, the so-called evils of the United States? Our history has been, as the song says, stony the road we trod. And they found, it's a 400-page report you can get out there. The lawmakers up there in Sacramento have done a great job in researching, finding facts, on what has happened. And now I guess they need to do the process to get to the reparations, to get to the check or whatever it's going to look like. I found an advocacy organization that's really linked up in that whole experience of fact finding with the reparations. They are the Californians for, Coalition for Equitable. Look, let me just bring my brother in. He can tell us CEJC and tell us what that is. Brother Chris from the CEJC. Hold on, I lost my mouse over here. There he is. Good morning, my brother.
Peace, and blessings. Hope all is good. Shout out to you, Greg J. Appreciate you for having me. And big shout out to the whole audience watching. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you for coming in, sipping coffee with us and chopping it up with me. See, let's get to the bottom of it. First of all, give me the correct. I thought I was practicing memorizing the name when we get on the air. I can't remember it.
I know it's so many letters. CJEC, Coalition for a Just and Equitable California. And we are California's first, only so far, and leading statewide grassroots, descendant-led volunteer organization born just for reparations and reparative justice. So that's all we do. That's all we work on, specifically for Black Americans who are descendants of those who were emancipated from chattel slavery.
All right. Well, listen, thank you for that. And let's just get to the bottom of it. I mean, when we think of California, folks probably, we didn't have the same aspects of Jim Crow and slavery and all of that. So the history, I think, of Black folks in California is a little different, sort of, but that report shows a lot of, inequities. There's still sundown towns and, redlining and all of that. Give us a little background on why American descendants of slaves in California should get reparations.
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's the right question and the right place to start from, because you're right. If you just think about what we learned in school or learn from parents or family members or friends, you might think that California was a, quote, free state, or you might think that there was no slavery in the state of California when we became a state in 1849, 1850. And although you might think that, that would be wrong. And that is what the State Reparations Task Force helped to uncover and make more public and raise more awareness about over the past 2 years of its work that ended in June of 2023, where the State Task Force produced a first report, which was about 500 pages in the summer of 2022, halfway through its work. And then finally, in June of 2023, last year, when it finished its work, an almost 1,100-page report, which details the complicity, and I like that you use that word, complicity, of California, not just in enslavement of our people. So let me say this plainly. There were enslaved Black Americans, African Americans in California. California was not a free state, or put another way, as the chair of the State Reparations Task Force put it, we were free in name only, because there were thousands of African Americans, Black Americans who were trafficked to California to work. And I'm using the word work loosely because it's not work if you don't get paid for it, right? It's something else, right? Slavery. But to labor, shall we say, in our gold mines, in our fields, in our farms. We actually have the privilege and pleasure within our organization, which is a coalition of statewide reparations groups and local reparations groups. We have the privilege and pleasure of working right now with some of the living descendants of people who were enslaved in the state of California.
Wow. 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 Wow.
Now, let me say too, real quick, because I think you touched on this, and it's the right place to start, as mentioned. So California not only permitted, allowed, and profited from slavery itself directly, but California had one of the worst fugitive slave laws in the country. One of the toughest, strongest, worstest fugitive slave laws in the country, where if you somehow freed yourself from some other place in some other state and came to California, if and when you were caught, you were either enslaved here or sent right back to where you came from in the way that you came from. So right into slavery. And lastly, California did not itself ratify or agree with the 14th Amendment and the 15th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which were passed in the 1850s, 1860s, 1870s. California did not agree with those two constitutional amendments until 1959 and 1962, respectively. So almost 100 years after those Civil War Reconstruction era amendments to the Constitution were agreed on by most of the rest of the country, California didn't agree with that until another 100 years later.
I think the first governor of California, Peter Bernett, I believe was a slaveholder. I do know that he was quite the racist, that's for sure. I was in Sacramento. I'm also very deeply in the arts and culture space, and we were in the state capitol advocating for the arts. So while I was in the building, the state capitol building, I took the little tour, and the guide straight said, "We don't like him. He was a racist." Man.
Yes, so he was. Peter Bernett, he first governor who, was, for lack of a better word, a Confederate. Like many of our original, folks who came to the state and actually, created and led the state government. Folks who were either Confederates literally or Confederate sympathizers. And Peter Bernett was, I think he came actually from Oregon and was responsible for the no Black people allowed in Oregon laws, and made his way to California and worked to try to create no Black people allowed in California laws.
It's interesting. People don't know that the state of Oregon was established as they did not allow Black people in Oregon when they became a state. People don't realize that histoy,
That's right. Really right.
That's why many of us up there. I participated in a press conference with the California Black Media Network, and right as one of the reports that you mentioned was released, and I will always remember Assemblymember Reggie Jones Sawyer answering a question, and that was like, okay, well, what did you find in your research and report? And he says very plainly, like you said, California was complicit. And that hit me in my gut. I was like, dang, that really does resonate with my soul when I think about California and the issue of reparations. California was complicit. For you, as you do this work and you dive into all of the research that's come up, what is the one most striking item that makes you say, dang?
Oh, man, so much, man. Thank you for that question, brother. That is a brilliant question. I wish people asked me that question more. and ask us that question more, because, and I understand, the report that the task force put together, as we mentioned, the final report, again, the first report is about 500 pages, but the final report is about 1,000 pages, 1,100 pages, and it actually includes the first report also. So like the first half of the final report is the first report, but and we're also doing live weekly readings of the final report on YouTube right now, by the way, on our YouTube channel. For folks who don't have time to read 1,000 pages, this is the first time I've ever read anything 1,000 pages, maybe other than like the Bible or something, or or something, a textbook or something like that in class or something like that. But so I think two things stand out for me. One of them, well, I just mentioned one of them about how long California took to ratify or agree with those Civil War Reconstruction amendments, the 14th and the 15th. But I think also there's two other things that really stood out for me. I mean, there's so much in that final report, but one of them is that, during the years of 1920 and 1921, that sort of 2-year almost period, there were more KKK Klan meetings in California than there were in Texas, Mississippi, and I believe Louisiana. Okay.
Wow.
So think about that. In 1920, 1921. So in that 2-year period, there were more Klan meetings here in this state than there were in those southern states. The other thing that I think stood out to me was there's a chapter. So what I just quoted was a chapter. The stat I just quoted was from chapter, I think it's 3, the chapter on racial terror from the final report of the task force. And then this next part that stood out to me also is from the chapter. I can't remember the chapter number, but it's a chapter on called mental and physical harm and neglect. And you'll notice that each of the chapters in the final report, or at least the first half of the final report generally, is broken down where each chapter is about one of the particular areas for why we need reparations. So there's a chapter on enslavement, a chapter on racial terror, on political disenfranchisement, on housing harms, health harms, the pathologizing of the Black family, environmental harms, the wealth gap, education harms, theft of intellectual and cultural property, wage theft, etc. But in the chapter on mental health, mental and physical harm and neglect, the researchers tell us that right now, this it's even hard to say sometimes, but right now, when you compare the mortality rate or the death rate for Black babies to white babies, right now, Black babies right now are dying. Our babies are dying at a higher rate now than they were in the 1850s.
Oh, man.
During slavery. So, I mean, that will stop you in your tracks, and that's what the researchers and that's what the state task force report tells us. And then finally, I think one thing that stood out to me too is the work that the economists did. So the state task force hired a team of economists to answer the question, how much would this cost the state of California? How much would the reparations program cost the state of California? And the team of economists did some amazing, groundbreaking, transformational, historic. I've never seen some of this math. How do you put numbers on this and that and that? They actually have done it, not for everything, of course, but as much as they could do. And they've estimated that just across 5 areas of harm, that are in that final report, just 5 of the 12 or 13 different areas that the task force looked at, that the state of California, or rather that our community, we descendants, have lost, and the state of California has taken about $800 billion in financial wealth out of our communities, just across 5 areas of harm, which include housing, mass incarceration, over policing, eminent domain and property takings, et cetera. Almost $1 trillion. We would be almost $1 trillion wealthier as a people, just here in the state of California, had not these things actually happened to us.
Wow. That's very, very interesting. I can relate to the Ku Klux Klan meetings. There is a piece of Long Beach history where we originate, Long Beach, California, and they One of the largest Ku Klux Klan meetings did happen here. I don't know, I can't remember the number, 30, 40, 50,000 of them descended on the city of Long Beach back in the 20s. And during that period of time that you stated. And, Long Beach is also, when they study the African-American history in this particular region, you can see where the redlining, the blacks were confined to a very specific area of Long Beach, back in the day. And that is a tangible piece of history. There's people in the city that are committing their life right now to researching that history and showing the actual evidence that these things did occur in the city of Long Beach. I'll tell this story as I'm thinking, I was just reminded of it as I was listening to you. So before I got into the radio business, into the entertainment business, I was working at a bank, and I worked in the foreclosure department, actually the mortgage division of a very large bank. And I worked in the foreclosure department. And, when you initiate a foreclosure, you have to pull all of the original documents of the property, the deed, the conditions, the CCRs, covenant conditions and restrictions, and review them, before you begin the legal proceedings of, taking the folks home. And you would be surprised with how many homes had in their CCRs no Negroes, no Mexicans, no Asians will reside in this property except in a domestic capacity. And that always used to just trip me out, because a lot of the cities where these properties were located that had that clause in their CCRs were like all black, in present day, all black, all Mexican, all Asian. It was just really, really incredible to see, that stuff. And I remember bringing that up to one of the big bosses in the mortgage division, just to ask. I wanted to have an understanding. It's like, okay, what is this? And they said, well, that's no more, that doesn't apply anymore. They just kind of brushed it off. But as always, I've always carried that memory because, you know what, it was in black and white. It was in the official documents. It happened, And so, and then we also have one of our coffee conversations. I think I'm going to dig that up and rebroadcast it. There was a professor from Vermont who had a comprehensive study. He's passed away now, but he has a comprehensive study of sundown towns all around the United States. And in California, you would be surprised at how many sundown towns there are, or there were, meaning at sundown you could not be in the city limits. Some of your favorite heavily black communities in California were once sundown towns: Inglewood, Hawthorne, Torrance. It's really interesting to see that this history did in fact exist in the state of California. All right, so now look, we went to the polls. It's fireworks in California in particular. It's politics from top to bottom, all politically in the United States, but in California, even down to our state level elections, what should we be looking for as voters? What's the whole next step for reparations? What should we be looking for in these candidates, and what do we want them to do up there in Sacramento to advance the case for reparations?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question also. And thank you for asking that. I think there's two ways I want to answer. First, on the candidates and what we should be looking for, and then also what we want state legislators who are in office now to be doing now before the general election, which is coming, not too long from now, to be in November. And also big shout out to everybody who, exercised their rights over the past, yesterday, of course, which was the last day to vote. But of course, in the 6 weeks prior, as you all know, California has 6 weeks of early voting. And I am of the, of the energy and of the spirit and of the vibe of no reparations, no vote. So personally, I don't support candidates who do not support reparations, specifically for descendants of persons who were enslaved and then emancipated in this country. So I have a litmus test. even to open the door for me to consider to vote for you, I need to know that you support reparations specifically for the descendants. And to make it even more clear for candidates, I need to know that you support checks. Right? So not everything but the checks. I need to know that you support the checks. You can support the other things too, but if you say I support reparations, but I don't support actually paying your people and your people back, then I'm going to close the door also. But once you've told me that, then I am open to hearing your positions on a bunch of other issues. And yesterday, and I tweeted this out. I voted yesterday for candidates who fit that first test, and then I also voted for the ballot propositions that we had here locally, where I am in the city of Sacramento. So what we normally recommend, and now our organization, we don't endorse candidates, we don't do any of that, but what I individually recommend, and I know a lot of us do who work with the organization and the coalition partners that we have across the state, are and is the no reparations, no vote. And we are encouraging everyone, the primary's done, but now we're in the general election. So for the general election, one, we're asking folks to let the candidates know that you support reparations, that you want them to support reparations, and that you're going to use whether or not they support reparations in your decision about whether or not to vote for them in the general election in November. Generally speaking, we are encouraging, and I am encouraging, every Californian, Black and not Black, to make reparations a part of the equation that you use to decide whether or not to vote for someone, and to make that a part of your decision-making process going forward, not just in the general election, but every election until and even after the checks get cut. Secondly, state legislators right now, so we may talk a little bit more about this, but right now there are a series and a set of reparations or reparations-related or bills based on the recommendations of the State Reparations Task Force. And so what we're recommending right now is that state legislators, one, introduce and then support bills based on the task force's recommendations that contain and emphasize and prioritize direct, tangible, targeted, timely monetary resources and payments for descendants of persons who were enslaved and then emancipated in the United States. And we're encouraging folks to reach out to their state senators and state legislators and state assembly members with that particular language, that you want direct, targeted, tangible, timely monetary resources and payments in legislation this year. And we're also encouraging folks to support some of the bills that we do like, that we've seen from some of the legislators that are based on the task force's recommendations. One specific example is Senate Bill 490, which would create a reparations agency. So a place for us to go to apply for reparations, to go to show that we're eligible, to go to get our claims and payments processed. Every group that got reparations had some sort of government infrastructure set up to actually do it. That was the case for our Japanese American brothers and sisters. It was the case for for the folks who were survivors of the Holocaust. It's the case for many of our Native brothers and indigenous brothers and sisters also. Whole agencies, whole bureaus are set up just to serve the particular community. And so we have a bill now that would do that. It would create the California American Freedmen Affairs Agency, and that agency would be responsible for actually carrying out and cutting the checks, and would be the place that you go if you have questions, et cetera. So we're encouraging folks to reach out to their state senators right now, and of course their state assembly members soon, to support Senate Bill 490, and there'll be some others too.
That's very interesting. So you all are saying a check, not like enhanced benefits or scholarships or whatever. You try to get us the money.
We got to get. Listen, they took our people worked for 256 plus years. We have. There's no way that we're not going to walk away from here without checks cut, and many checks over many years too. So the task force recommended what is the equivalent of a guaranteed income program for descendants, and this would be over time, installment payments basically for the rest of our lives, with a down payment on the front end and prioritizing our elders first. That's what the task force recommended, and $800 billion worth of that, at least. And so this is a program that would last over time, but there's no way to do this without checks. And we have a saying: if it doesn't have direct compensation, it's not reparations.
Not reparations, right? Okay, so now there's somebody out there that says, "Well, shoot, California got a $70 million deficit. How are we going to afford this?" And you say what?
I say a lot. One, we say California also has $250 billion budget. We spend $250 billion every year. We are the 4th largest economy on planet Earth. Our state, the state of California, is the 4th largest economy on the planet. Our economy as a state, just one of our 50 states, our economy is larger than all countries across the world, with the exception of 3. And one of those 3 is our country. So we also say that budget deficits are no excuse. Isn't it ironic that when it comes to paying us, we can't find the money. We don't have the money. We have a budget deficit. But when it comes to paying other groups, when it comes to paying for other programs, we automatically find the money. We somehow have the money. So budget deficits are no excuse. It's not a question of whether we have the money. It's, do we have the will, the courage, and the power? Do we have the will, the courage, and the power? Also, ironically enough, or maybe not so ironically, fortunately, recently in the last week or so, we've seen language for a bill introduced by State Senator Stephen Bradford, who I'm sure your audience is very familiar with in the LA area. Senator Stephen Bradford, who represents parts of the LA area, has introduced Senate Bill 1331. This is a bill that would require, well, first it would create a permanent California reparations fund in our state treasury, in our state budget. Secondly, it would require 6% every year of our state special funds to be deposited into that account and fund to fund reparations, including direct payments. So we actually have a bill to actually require our state to start putting away money for our reparations. And we have, some of you may know, we have some special funds in our state and what we call a rainy day fund, where pretty much every time we can, we just put money aside. And there's billions of dollars there. So it's not a question of whether we can afford it. It's a question of whether or not we want to do it.
All right. Now, do you all have a list of, legislators who are supporting this? Who are our allies, like currently? I will call somebody out. So it's just
we're working on it. We're working on it. That's actually part of my job. We're working on it.
Selena Gonzalez is, who's supporting us? Who's rolling with us up there in Sacramento?
So we're working on it. That's sort of short answer is no. We don't have a current accurate list, because we actually won't know for sure until there are bills with direct payments in them to be voted on. Right. So the ultimate list is going to be the list of actual votes. Right. So yes, I support Senate bill or AB or Assembly bill, whatever the number is that has the direct payments in it. Yes, I support. So until we actually have votes on bills like Senate Bill 490, Senate Bill 1331, and some of the others too, then we actually won't know. But generally speaking, what we were told and what we have been told by the California Legislative Black Caucus, which represents the Black members of the state legislature. So there's 80 state assembly members total. There's 40 state senators total. You add that up, that's 120. About 12 of them max are Black. None of them represent majority Black areas, by the way. None of them. But there's about 10, 12 Black members. And that's the group of legislators who the State Reparations Task Force gave their final report to, and said, okay, we've done our work as a state task force. We put all the research together. We've made the recommendations. We've told you who we want to be eligible. We've told you how much. We've told you what else. Now take these recommendations and turn them into actual laws. And so presumably, the members of the Legislative Black Caucus are in support of reparations, and at least each one has said so in words, but it's about the specifics, because you can say you're for reparations, but you can say you're for reparations, but not the checks. To me, that means you're not for reparations. So, yeah.
So, well, check this out. So then a lot of those, 10 or 12 folks make up the Legislative Black Caucus. Some are terming out, right?
Yep.
So I know
3 or 4, yep.
This is done, and it? So Senator Bradford is
over. Joan Sawyer, Chris Holden, and Kevin McCarty I don't believe he's terming out, but he is running for mayor of Sacramento. So he may be leaving on his own terms. And, there are candidates who are, obviously, and it's a great question again, because it ties back to your earlier question about the primaries. We just had some primaries yesterday finished, and we're still looking at some of the results coming in, but it's not certain. I'm not certain that the members who leave the caucus will all be replaced by new Black Caucus members. Mm-hmm. I'm not certain yet. And of course, we have a general election coming up in the next several months anyway. So I'm not certain yet. And that's another argument that we've and that's another reason why we've made the argument to members of the Black Caucus that the time to strike and the time to be strong is now, because who knows what your political power looks like 12 months from now. Sure. Well, it always comes down to the people. So I guess this is the opportunity for us as the people to really start letter writing and making sure that we're asking the questions, the tough and specific questions of these candidates that are coming in, because we have a generational change afoot here. And so it would be a shame to let all of this work just kind of go dormant after the champions for this work have gone on to other items, whether they're terming out or seeking other offices or anything. And I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. It's actually a little scary, but so we've got to put this front of mind with the people. How soon before 1390 and 1331 and 490?
How soon before they hit the voting floor?
Good question. So we expect that for at least, Senate Bill 490 and possibly for 1331 also, that we'll see those bills make their way to committee hearings and then committee votes first, and then to the floor sometime within, early March, within the next couple of months. I think that's a fair assessment. So let's say no later than May, we should be, already have had some hearings or be scheduled for some hearings. That timeline may change, but generally within the next let's say 6 to 8 weeks, I would expect that there would be some movement toward hearings, and that's part of the work for us to make sure that at those hearings there's a strong showing of support and public comment, and that people are at those hearings in person and virtually also. And then also there are some other bills too that will be, there are multiple bills that will be either going up for hearings or already have gone up for hearings. Some already have, but for those two particular bills and those bills that we've focused mostly on so far, within the next 6 to 8 weeks.
Man, we got our work cut out for us. And
yes, we do. And
right now.
Yeah. But this is history, and I want to make this point too, if I can. I usually say this to as many folks as possible when we speak, but we are in history right now. There have never been state level bills even trying to call themselves or doing reparations in our state's history and in the country's history, not at the state level, not at the state level. So we are really in a historic place. We're writing our own script and future right now. People 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now are going to be looking at what we did here now and looking for lessons of things that we did well and lessons for things that they can improve upon. So we are literally in a historic, I mean, literally as soon as we cross that January, first day, and as soon as some of those first bills got introduced, as soon as some of these bills got introduced, we were in uncharted territory as a people. Mm-hmm. And that's not an overstatement. It's not, hype. That is real.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you a question. Down here in Southern California, they had, Bruce's Beach over there in Manhattan Beach. And, in short, the story is that, the land was taken from a Black family back in the day. And, ultimately the family got together, rallied the community. They were able to get the beach back. And I guess in a way that's a form of reparations. That's really my question. Do you consider that a form of reparations? But then the family sold it, and they sold it back to the county. So my question is, would you consider that a form of reparations? And them selling it back to the county, does that hurt the reparations movement?
Great questions. I'm glad you asked that question too, because one of the legislators who was responsible for changing the laws to allow the county to sell it back or to grant it back to the Bruce family was State Senator Stephen Bradford. It was Senator Bradford's bill that created the possibility for the Bruce family to get their property back. So to your first question, to be honest, it is a part of it. Yes, it is a part of it. Yes, and I'm saying that using a certain kind of definition of reparations. So under certain kinds of definitions of reparations, yes, it is a part of it. And the kind of definition that I'm using right now is a definition that the United Nations uses, which defines reparations to have 5 pieces to it. So 5 things need to be there in order for you to call something reparations, according to the United Nations. The first is compensation. Right? I don't have to say that again, right? That's the money, that's the checks. Second is restitution. This is the return of property, the return of land, or the restoring of you to where you would have been or could have been or should have been had the bad things happen to it, had the bad things that happened to us never happened in the first place. The third piece that has to be there is what we call rehabilitation. So these are what you could think of as non-financial forms. So free medical services from cradle to the grave, free legal services, free educational services. Guarantees of non-repetition is the fourth piece. These are changes to our systems, changes to our policies, changes to our laws to make sure that what happened to us never happens again. And then finally, what we call satisfaction. These are what people call the more symbolic forms, but I don't think of these as symbolic as much. I think some of them can be symbolic, but I don't think of them as symbolic generally. So they're things like a formal public apology, the changing of our textbooks to make sure that the actual history is told, the removal of public displays of our oppressors and oppression, and replacing those with displays publicly of our culture and our history. So according to the definition that I'm talking about now, which is the United Nations definition, which is also, by the way, the definition that the State Reparations Task Force was by law required to use in the bill that created the State Task Force, which was Assembly Bill 3121, by the way, for anyone who's interested. We actually helped write the final version of that law back in 2019 and 2020 with then Assemblymember Dr. Shirley Weber, now, of course, California State Secretary, Dr. Shirley Weber, Secretary of State, Dr. Weber. So according to that definition, reparations equals compensation plus restitution plus rehabilitation plus guarantees of non-repetition plus satisfaction equals reparations. So that return of property is one piece of reparations according to that definition, but you couldn't call that by itself reparations according to that definition. And I'll just flag for you also that we're talking a lot about State Senator Stephen Bradford here today, but State Senator Bradford introduced another bill, Senate Bill 1050, which would, and this was in the last few weeks too, which would require the reparations agency, specifically the chief financial officer of the reparations agency, and authorize that person and require that person to first create a database and a list of all state properties taken by eminent domain unjustly from descendants, and then to either return that property or justly compensate. And this is in the bill language, provide just compensation at fair market value to those individuals and their families. And that is a direct recommendation from the state task force.
Wow. So some of y'all remember that 105 freeway. A lot of people, lost their homes back in the day when they were building that. I remember that. Eminent domain.
Right.
Wow. Okay, Steve Bradford. I always knew you were the man. Hitting home runs. You going down. Wow. That's it. That's incredible, man. All right. So let me just ask this. Okay. So now somebody's listening to this and they want to get into the study of it. Where can we find the mega reports that I know it's just public record, right? But I'm sure some website somewhere we can just hit a link and download it or read it from there. Where would that be?
Yes. So there are public digital free copies of the report available. There are also public digital summaries and executive summaries of the report available also. You can find those on our website, on our reports page. So that's www.cjec-official.org, www.cjec-official.org. On our reports page, if you click the reports link, there's a bunch of other great reports there too, but that's one of them. As I mentioned earlier, you can listen to the report being read to you by one of our amazing volunteers every week. Every week, one of our volunteers picks a part of a chapter and reads part of it. It's every Thursday at 7 p.m. on YouTube. It's at our YouTube channel at CJEC Official on YouTube. Of course, all of the earlier readings are up there right now. So if you want to listen to some of the chapters, already, you can go to our site, our YouTube channel also and check those out. And then if you want to get the report directly from the California Department of Justice Division of Civil Rights, which was the part of our government that was asked to help the task force do its work over the past 2 years, the website is www, and I hope I'm going to remember this right, www.oag.gov/AB3121. And then on that homepage, there's a big reports button. So it's www.oag.ca.gov/AB3121. But again, it's probably faster and easier to remember if you just go to our website and look for it.
Sure. Well, you know what I'm going to do? I'll put those links on Beach City Radio, beachcityradio.com. I'm also going to embed your YouTubes on that site as well, beachcityradio.com, so that we can be up on your postings and just everything like that. So we want to keep our eye on the ball on this one, and just make sure that the people are informed. Let me ask you this question, because I know it just popped in my mind before we go. How can the Black church get involved in this movement? Like, what would you ask of them if you have access to faith-based community activists? Because they're out there, right?
Yes.
So like, how would you intersect with the faith-based community?
Yeah, great question. So first, I want to shout out all of the amazing faith-based organizations and influencers and activists and advocates who have been supporting this work so far. I'm thinking about folks at Loveland Church in Fontana, and Pastor Chuck Singleton, and of course Nita Watson, who has done amazing work with the National Volunteer Council on Freedmen Affairs, done great work organizing and engaging faith-based organizations in Fontana. Also want to give a shout out to Allen Temple Baptist Church in Oakland, which has been great. Has co-hosted reparations panels and workshops with us over the past two years. And then I want to shout out an organization called COPE, Congregations Organized for Prophetic Engagement. I hope I'm saying it right, which was one of the organizations that we worked with during the task force's time to do community outreach for reparations. But to your answer straight up though, And there's a few ways. Oh, also, I want to give a shout out to the Jewish Community Relations Council, also, which has been doing tremendous work. And I'm going to blank on the synagogue's name here in Sacramento. Congregation Ben something. I was just there for Shabbat like 2 weeks ago. They did a Friday night Shabbat. It was all about reparations for us, which it was amazing. So big shout out to them. But so I think there's a couple of ways. First, please invite us. So invite our organization to speak to either your congregation leadership and or your congregation generally. And invite us to your congregation to speak about reparations. This Saturday, we're going to be in LA at one of the churches talking about. This Sunday, we're going to be in LA at one of the churches talking about reparations. The following Sunday, I'll be in Inglewood at one of the churches talking about reparations. So invite us to speak to your congregation or to your leadership directly, and then on your own. If you are a faith-based organization or leader, please talk about reparations in your sermons and to your people. Raise the awareness about reparations among your people now. Now is the time. Now is the time to pull out the scriptures in Genesis or look in the Quran or look in the Torah and look for the parts of your books that talk about reparations, that talk about how when the children of Israel left Egypt, they left with the Egyptians' gold and silver and all kinds of clothes and gifts. Find the parts in your scriptures now and start building it into your sermons now. You don't need us to do that because you'll know it better than us, but do that now.
All right, do it now. Do it now. Reparations now. Oh man, that's what we're talking about here. Brother Chris Lodgson, man, thank you for coming in. And look, you got an open door. Come on, grab your coffee mug and come on through.
Yes, sir. I need some coffee right now. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I would love to come back, brother. Thank you. And I would love to come back and update the folks, as I was just saying. So I would love to come back regularly and update the family. And of course, if there are any questions, feel free to reach out.
All right, y'all. That's what's up there. Thank you. Thank you. Reparations. Say the name of your organization again. Coalition
for a Just and Equitable California, CJEC. We're California's first, only, and leading statewide org. Yes, for reparations. CJEC.
Let's go. CJEC. Come on, y'all. Let's get on this reparations train. Let's make it happen. You know, just like you, I know we having low voter turnout and stuff, but see, this is the problem right there. We got to make sure that our voices are heard. There's people out there doing the hard work out there. This, you heard 500 page report, 1,100 page report. There's folks out there doing the work. There's only 10, 11, 12, Black legislators up there in Sacramento. They need the people's help. So speak up if you want reparations. If you need to understand reparations, you see they've done a comprehensive study. We got Brother Chris here and his organization out on the grassroots, out here in these here streets, letting us know about reparations. So there's no excuse. Go ahead and learn about it. Make your decisions. Support it. Make your voice heard. That's what's up. Okay. All right, now, y'all, you know how it is. You can get this podcast wherever you get your favorite podcast, iHeart, Spreaker, Apple, just wherever it is. Check it out, Coffee Conversations with Greg J. Also on YouTube, please like and subscribe our playlist there, Coffee Conversations with Greg J. And, of course, go over to Beach City Radio, beachcityradio.com, to see all of the episodes of Coffee Conversations with Greg J. Tell a friend. Love one another, y'all. Love one another. Love one another. Peace and blessings.